You know the type: cold, detached, distant. The one who vanished when things got real, who ghosted when it got too deep, who played it cool, who pretended they didn't care, while you burned with a fire they couldn't face. But listen closely. When the avoidant finally realizes they're hopelessly hooked on you, it changes everything. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Avoidants aren't heartless. They're scared. They don't flee because they don't feel. They flee because they feel too much. And when that truth cracks open inside them, when it hits that you were the one person who saw through the armor, the one they pushed away, and you still stayed kind, still stayed real. You think avoidants are cold, distant, unfeeling, that they run because they don't care, that they're just naturally disconnected from love or emotions? That's the biggest myth holding you back from understanding the truth and from finally breaking free, because the reality cuts so much deeper. Avoidants don't run because they don't feel. They run because they feel too much. They're terrified of the intensity inside them. They're scared to dive into the very feelings that make you you. They don't want to drown in that ocean of vulnerability, so they swim away, pretending it's safer on the shore. But make no mistake, under that cold exterior is a storm raging. Sometimes barely contained, sometimes hidden behind walls and silence, but a storm nonetheless. You ever wonder why they disappear just when things start getting real, why they shut down the moment you get close enough to break through? It's because their own emotions become a threat they can't face. Their mind screams run, not because love scares them, but because their own feelings terrify them. When they finally realize that you see them, not the mask, not the distance, but the real, raw person underneath, that's when the world shifts. That's when the ground shakes beneath their feet. And that moment, it's the moment you've been waiting for, even if you didn't know it, because you didn't just see their surface. You saw the part they buried deep, the part they ran from themselves. They're not heartless. They're broken in ways they don't even know how to fix. And your love, your presence becomes a mirror reflecting the parts they refuse to face. And the scary part, sometimes they push you away harder. They distance themselves more because they're terrified of what that reflection means. But that reflection, that's their soul begging for connection. That's their hidden desire for healing. That's the truth they don't yet have the courage to embrace. This is why patience is not weakness. This is why your understanding is your power. You can't force an avoidant to stay or to open up, but you can be the presence that finally cracks through their armor. When they run, they aren't rejecting love. They're rejecting the chaos inside themselves. They want to be safe from their own feelings as much as from anyone else. Your ability to hold space for that fear without judgment, that's what makes you irresistible. That's what shifts the game. Because when they finally realize they're hooked on you, it's not just because of your charm or your loyalty. It's because you held the light in the darkest parts of their fear and refused to let go. And here's the wildest truth. The avoidance flight is a desperate survival tactic. It's not a statement about your worth. It's a statement about their inner battle. You might have felt hurt, abandoned, confused. You might have asked yourself, why can't they love me like I love them? The answer isn't that you weren't enough. It's that they weren't ready to face themselves. Until they can do that, no amount of love from you can fill that void or heal that fear. So stop blaming yourself. Stop chasing what's not ready to stay. Instead, become the person who is so strong, so clear, so full of self-love that when they finally come back, they see you and they see themselves, and that changes everything. You have to understand this to survive the emotional roller coaster. This is why avoidance isn't rejection. It's a defense. The avoidant isn't closing a door on love. They're slamming the brakes on feelings they can't handle yet. That means your role isn't to fix them. Your role is to show up fully with your heart open, your boundaries strong, and your self-worth untouchable. Because the avoidance fear is a test of your own strength. Can you hold your ground when they pull away? Can you stay steady when they act distant? Can you keep your love steady without losing yourself? The moment they realize they're hopelessly hooked on you is the moment the chase stops. They see what they lost. They feel what they buried. And suddenly, the fear of feeling too much shifts from a prison to a bridge. Because you became the safe place they never thought existed. You didn't run. You didn't break. You didn't disappear when the going got tough. You stayed. And that endurance, that unwavering presence, it makes you unforgettable. It makes you the one they want back, Not just for what you gave, but for what you made possible inside them, the courage to face their own fear of feeling. Remember this. Avoidance is not the enemy. Fear is the enemy. And when they finally see that you're still there, stronger, wiser, more alive, that's the moment they realize they're addicted to the very love they tried to avoid, because you became the embodiment of what they crave but can't yet have. Connection without chaos, love without fear, and presence without escape. So if you're still hurting, still waiting, still confused about why they run, it's not about you. It's about their battle with the overwhelming storm inside them. And your power is to hold your own storm steady, shining so bright they can't help but be drawn back, hooked not just on you, but on the truth you reflect in them. The truth that love is worth facing the fear. And that, when they finally realize it, nothing will ever be the same again. You want to understand the real power behind relationships with avoidance? Here it is. No sugarcoating. True power comes from your own healing, not from chasing them. Too many people make the fatal mistake of thinking that if they just try harder, if they just chase longer, if they just bend more, the avoidant will finally stick around. That's not how this game works. Chasing is weakness disguised as love. It's desperation masquerading as devotion. When you chase someone who's wired to run, you're feeding their fear, confirming their escape plan. You're telling them without words, I need you more than I need myself. And that's exactly the opposite of the magnetic energy that makes someone stop running. The avoidant is not going to stay because you begged or pleaded. They will stay because you leveled up, because you healed your own wounds and became so complete that your absence would be the loss, not their presence. This is the shift that flips the entire dynamic. It's not about pulling someone in with chains made of need. It's about becoming the kind of person who pulls people in with the force of your own self-worth, your own confidence, your own light. Healing is the game changer. When you focus on your own growth, your emotional health, your boundaries, your passions, you step into a power so magnetic it forces the avoidant to pause. Suddenly, you're not the one desperate for their attention. You're the one living a life so full and compelling that their fear of losing you becomes a wake-up call. And that fear isn't about them losing control over you. It's about losing connection to the part of themselves they tried to run from. When you heal, you reflect back a version of love that's fearless, patient, and steady. That's a love avoidants secretly crave, but are terrified to step into. So instead of chasing, you become that love for yourself first. You stop trying to fix them or pull them out of their shell and start fixing your own world. You become so powerful in your own right that anyone who wants to be part of your life has to rise to your level. You become a lighthouse that guides instead of a storm that chases. And let me be clear, healing doesn't mean waiting around, hoping they come around. Healing means taking your power back now. It means building a life so radiant, so rich, that their absence becomes an opportunity, not a punishment. When you chase, you drain your energy, you lose your center, you weaken your boundaries. But when you heal, you build an unbreakable core. You learn that your worth isn't tied to their presence. You discover that your happiness doesn't depend on their approval. And that shift is electric. Transformational. It makes the avoidant see you not as a problem to solve, but as a prize worth keeping. Because when you're chasing, you're saying, I'm incomplete without you. When you're healed, you're saying, I'm whole, and you can join me if you choose. This is why chasing is the fastest way to lose respect and love from someone who fears intimacy. Avoidants are wired to pull away from neediness because it triggers every alarm in their system. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting what they perceive as emotional suffocation. So the moment you stop suffocating and start breathing fully for yourself, you create space for them to come closer. Healing becomes the magnet. Chasing becomes the repellent. Your growth shines a spotlight on your value. And the avoidance fear suddenly meets a new reality they can't ignore. They may not know it at first, but deep down, they feel it. They feel the strength in your calm, the peace in your presence, the unwavering confidence that says you won't settle for less than you deserve. And that scares them in a good way because it forces them to confront their own patterns or risk losing something real. Remember, healing is not just about emotional work. It's about reclaiming your life in every area, your goals, your friendships, your passions. When you build a world that thrives without their constant presence, you become the person who's impossible to leave behind. Avoidance respects strength, even if they're afraid of it. They are drawn to people who don't bend at the first sign of distance. They respect boundaries because it tells them you're not a doormat, you're a force of nature. So you don't just heal your heart, you heal your mind, your spirit, your entire being. You become a whole person who loves fully, but doesn't need validation. That kind of energy disrupts their patterns and makes them realize they're not just hooked on you, they're hooked on the peace and power you embody. And here's the kicker. You don't have to wait for the avoidant to come to that realization. When you heal, you reclaim your power right now. You stop wasting time on uncertainty and start investing in your own life. You don't ask for permission to be happy. You take it. You don't wait for them to change. You change yourself. That's the kind of radical self-love that rewrites your story and shifts the entire relationship dynamic. You become the person they thought they could never have, the person who doesn't chase but commands presence through undeniable strength. They become the one running to catch up, trying to prove they deserve a place in your life. Healing becomes the greatest form of revenge, not because you want to punish them, but because you refuse to let their fear keep you small. You grow beyond the pain of their avoidance. You build a life so bright that it doesn't just attract them, it inspires them to evolve or get left behind. And when they finally realize they're hopelessly hooked on you, it's because you became the prize by loving yourself fiercely, by standing firm in your value, and by refusing to settle for anything less than the love you deserve. That's power. That's freedom. That's the game changer you never thought possible. If you can embrace this truth, you stop wasting energy chasing shadows and start creating a reality where love is a choice, not a chase. You stop begging for attention and start demanding respect. You don't wait for avoidance to come around. You become so whole, so powerful, so magnetic that they have no choice but to see what they've been missing. This is how you turn the tables. This is how you reclaim your life. This is how you become unstoppable. You have to understand this deeply. When they finally realize your worth, you should already be beyond their reach. This is the ultimate power move, the game-changing truth that flips the entire relationship dynamic on its head. So many people get stuck waiting, hoping, chasing the avoidant to come back, to finally wake up to what they had. But by the time they open their eyes to your value, you cannot be the same person you were when they left or pulled away. Because if you are, then nothing has changed. You're still caught in the same cycle of need and doubt that made you vulnerable in the first place. The moment they realize they're hooked on you, the real magic happens only if you have already risen above the version of yourself that needed their validation. You must be so far gone in your own growth, your own power, your own unshakable self-love, that reaching you is no longer as simple as it once was. You become the prize that they lost but now have to fight for. And that fight only happens when you have already stopped chasing. You have to rise to a level where their absence has been a catalyst, not a curse. Your life must be so full, so abundant, so charged with your own purpose and happiness that they walk back into a world that no longer revolves around their indecision. Because here's the truth. If you haven't moved forward, if you haven't healed and grown while they were gone, then you are still the same vulnerable person they left behind, and that makes you easy to ignore, easy to hurt again. But when you have transformed, when you have rewritten your story to one of strength and sovereignty, you become untouchable in the best way possible. The avoidance sees that you're no longer waiting with open arms. You're standing tall with arms wide open for the life you've created with or without them. This is about building a fortress around your heart, not walls to keep people out, but a strong foundation built on respect, self-love, and boundaries. You become someone who won't tolerate being a backup plan, someone who commands space and refuses to be a second choice. And when they realize what they lost, it's not just about regret, it's about respect. They start to see that you are a whole person who didn't collapse without them, who didn't lose yourself trying to hold on. That realization hits like a thunderbolt because it means they missed the chance to be part of something powerful and real. You didn't just wait around for them to change, you changed yourself. And that shift, it's what transforms the dynamic from chasing and running to mutual respect and authentic connection. When they finally come to understand your value, you're no longer someone they can control, manipulate, or take for granted. You've created a life where your happiness, your peace, and your success are your own. They might want in, they might try to reconnect, but now the power is in your hands. You get to choose if and how they fit into your new world. You hold the keys to your own heart, and you're no longer desperate for their validation or love. This isn't about revenge. It's about sovereignty. It's about proving to yourself that your worth was never dependent on anyone else's presence or absence. It's about standing in the undeniable truth that you deserve a love that elevates you, not diminishes you. This is the lesson so many miss. The avoidance realization comes late, often painfully late. But your response to that realization defines your future. You don't run back to them with open arms because you've been waiting for their approval. You stand firm in the version of yourself who survived without them and thrived despite their absence. You make it clear that you are not a safety net to fall back on, but a high standard they must meet. This power move flips the entire relationship energy from one of desperation to one of strength and dignity. It signals that you will not settle for less than you deserve, and that your time is too valuable to waste on people who couldn't see your worth when it mattered. In this space, you become magnetic in a new way, not because you're chasing or pleading, but because you embody what true self-love looks like. They might regret leaving, but you're not stuck in that regret. You're busy living your best life. You're busy growing, loving yourself fiercely, and setting the bar so high that only someone who's truly ready and willing can meet you. The avoidance late realization becomes their challenge, not your crisis. And this shift is everything. It means you've moved from being a victim of their fear to being the architect of your own destiny. You've taken back the narrative and rewritten your story to one of power, dignity, and unshakable self-respect. So when they finally see what they lost, you don't crumble or beg. You don't scramble to prove your worth again. You hold your head high, knowing you are the prize they failed to appreciate, and you are no longer available to be anyone's second choice. This is the kind of power that changes everything. This is how you take control of your own happiness and refuse to live in the shadow of someone else's fear. This is the moment you claim your life back fully and without apology. This is not just a love story. It's the story of your power, your sovereignty, your unshakable presence in a world that often tries to pull you down. When you're dealing with someone avoidant, you're not just navigating emotions and relationships. You're walking a path that challenges your entire sense of self. Too often, people get caught up in the drama of wanting someone to love them the way they want to be loved. But the real transformation happens when you realize this is about you, about your power, about standing tall no matter how others behave. It's about commanding your own life with fierce determination and refusing to let anyone's fear or absence dictate your value. This is the battlefield where you either become a victim or a victor. And I promise you, the difference isn't in their actions. It's in your response. You must stop playing small. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Avoidants pull away because intimacy scares them. But that's not your problem to fix. Your job is to become so whole, so magnetic, so impossibly powerful in your calm and clarity that your presence alone disrupts their patterns. When you embrace your power, you shift from being a desperate pursuer to a steady force, a grounded energy that commands respect. People with avoidant tendencies might try to push you away, but your unwavering confidence and self-love become the anchor that holds strong through their storms. And in that moment, they can't help but be drawn to your strength. Because what avoidants really fear is losing connection, not to just anyone, but to someone who embodies true power and presence. This is why standing tall and holding your boundaries is not just about protecting yourself. It's about showing up as a leader in your own life. It's about declaring that your time, your energy, your heart are precious commodities that demand respect. When you refuse to settle for less, you set a new standard, not just for them, but for yourself. And that shift sends a powerful message. You are no longer a passive participant in the dance of fear and avoidance. You are the one calling the steps. You are the one deciding who stays and who goes, who earns your trust and who doesn't. This is the power of self-mastery, and it's what transforms the relationship from a roller coaster of chasing and running into a space of mutual respect and genuine connection. But this power isn't about rigidity or coldness. It's about fierce love and compassion for yourself. It's about knowing that your worth isn't tied to anyone else's approval. It's about loving yourself so fiercely that you no longer tolerate games or half measures. You become the person who demands honesty, vulnerability, and real presence, not because you're unkind, but because you respect yourself too much to settle for anything less. This is a revolutionary act in a world that often rewards people-pleasing and compromise at the expense of personal integrity. When you live with this kind of power, you inspire others to rise as well. The avoidant might resist at first, but they can't help but notice your unwavering strength. And that's the kind of energy that can melt walls and open hearts. This journey isn't easy. It requires you to face your own fears, to confront your own pain, and to refuse to let past wounds dictate your future. It means stepping into discomfort and uncertainty with courage. It means choosing your own peace over chaos, your own dignity over desperation. But every step you take toward owning your power sends a shockwave through the relationship dynamic. It forces the avoidant to either evolve or step aside. And that's the ultimate truth. You can change someone else's wiring, but you can change how you show up in response to it. You can choose to be a beacon of strength rather than a victim of their avoidance. Imagine what it feels like to stand in a room, fully present, fully alive, with the kind of energy that makes others stop and take notice. That energy isn't arrogance. It's the quiet confidence of someone who has weathered storms and come out stronger. That energy is magnetic because it's real. When you cultivate that kind of presence, you don't just attract healthy relationships, you create them. You become the kind of person who doesn't settle for scraps or half-hearted attempts at connection. You become the standard. And when the avoidant finally realizes they're hopelessly hooked on you, it's because you embody everything they secretly desire but are afraid to claim. Strength, stability, love without fear. This story of power is your story. It's about reclaiming your life, your heart, and your destiny. It's about refusing to let someone else's fear dictate your happiness. It's about standing tall in your truth and walking forward with unwavering confidence. You are not here to be anyone's escape plan or safety net. You are here to be the storm and the calm, the fire and the peace. When you embrace this, you become unstoppable. You don't just survive the avoidance push and pull, you transcend it. You become the living proof that love, when rooted in power and presence, is unstoppable. So hold your head high, stand firm in your boundaries, love yourself fiercely, because this is more than a relationship lesson. It's a blueprint for your life. And once you own it, nothing or no one can ever take that power away from you.